This film covers 7 days in the city of Londonderry, from mid-morning on Sunday the 2nd of April 1978 to mid-morning on Sunday the 9th of April. The bells of the Protestant cathedral can be heard faintly at the Catholic cathedral. It was in Londonderry that the civil rights movement gained momentum. Agitation had been simmering, but in 1968 it boiled over. The civil rights movement pushed at the traditional structure of government in Northern Ireland, and it collapsed. The people of Northern Ireland and this city live with the results. The army assumed a major role in law and order in 1969. They came to stand between the two sides, and at first were seen as protectors by both. Eamon Malloch was a prime mover in the early civil rights movement. He does not go to church. He's working in his darkroom, a garden shed in the garden of his house in the Craigan Estate, a Catholic area.
Photography is a means of escape primarily. I have consciously tried to use my skill with the camera as an instrument of social comment. And over the past 9 years, I've attempted to capture on film the conflict. I've tried to make a chronicle out of it. I have captured on film the disappearance of Old Derry. I've captured on film the streets of Derry that have long since gone, which have so poignant memories to me as a child. Find with photography that I can go into my darkroom and close the door and leave the cares and woes of contemporary living behind me. And it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that on occasions photography has been a very stabilising influence in my life, something from which I derive a great deal of pleasure, and I feel that if one is unemployed and long-term unemployed, then it's absolutely necessary to develop other means of passing the time constructively, that is.
The photograph that he's working on this morning is for a prisoner's wife, Mrs. Irwin, to take to her husband. Her husband's in prison on remand, awaiting trial, charged with being in possession of explosives. The officer commanding the 1st Battalion of the Cheshires, Colonel Prosser, holds regular meetings with all his officers on Sunday mornings. They are responsible for the security operation in most of the city west of the river, including the Bogside, the Craigan, and the city centre.
Right, we'll start. Just remind you, our last O group was held on Good Friday, and therefore we are covering the period from Good Friday up to today, which is slightly longer than normal, a total of about 9 days, including the events of Easter itself. A much quieter period than I think most of us expected, spoilt sadly by the shooting of Private Cooper in B Company last Thursday.
At the beginning of the week, there was a shooting at SF Mobile in Turf Lodge. There were no casualties. On the 28th, there was a shooting in Downpatrick when an off-duty 3 UDR man was attacked. Once again, no casualties. There was also a shooting in Riverdale where the RUC checked out a car which was reported as hijacked. A youth was fired at and hit by the RUC when trying to escape. He had a revolver. Bomb-making equipment was found in the car and a number of arrests were made.
My theme has always been that the arrest of people and to subsequently have them convicted is far more important than the find of weapons. So I think it's important that the soldiers know that there are 29 people, therefore, facing very serious charges in the short time since we've been here. And the RUC, of course, are in very good heart to have that number of people awaiting trial.
Do you enjoy this sort of soldiering?
Serious? No. Anybody likes this in their life must be balmy. I don't like it one bit. But you gotta do it. That's what we're paid for, we gotta do it.
On the weapon side, OK, we've discovered 3 weapons and about 100 rounds of ammunition. There are 6 brand new weapons that have not been identified in any shooting incident hanging around, plus the M60, and we think, of course, that perhaps that's over the border.
The city has one of the most beautiful parts of Ireland on its doorstep. Donegal, over the border from Ulster, is a natural playground. As well as golf clubs, there are mountains and miles of marvellous beaches that can never be filled even in the height of summer. Geographically, the natural centre of this area is Londonderry, and until the border was drawn in the 1920s, separating the city from half its hinterland, it was the economic centre, with its port on the River Foyle as an outlet for the northwest. The port is very small now, mainly importing coal, exporting potatoes. This is the inaugural meeting of a River Foyle sailing club. Above the river is the city graveyard. Many people arrive on Sunday afternoons to tend the graves. Once both Protestants and Catholics would have been here, but now it's only the Catholics, since the cemetery is in a strongly Catholic area. The Republican memorials and graves are here. Since the present wave of troubles began in 1968, 78 civilians from both communities have been killed in the city and 65 army and police. Late Sunday afternoon. Traffic is light at the border checkpoints between Northern and Southern Ireland. The weather was not good enough to tempt large numbers of people into the Donegal countryside.
Just hold on a minute, please. Yeah, OK, mate, when you go straight through. Thank you very much.
At 5 p.m, Bobby Jackson, the verger, closes the gates of the Protestant cathedral. In the evening, at the Guildhall, rebuilt after much bomb damage, there's the prize winners' concert at the end of the Feis. A Feis is a competitive music festival. There are 2 such festivals held in the city, one predominantly Protestant and this one mainly Catholic. There was a recent debate at the Guildhall by the City Council to discuss whether the name of the city should be Derry or Londonderry. For the Mayor, Hugh Doherty, it's a situation in which his personal feelings and political judgment are in conflict.
The name of the city, on the map, the official name is Londonderry. I find it very, very difficult to call it Londonderry. To me, I would rather be without the British connection, that is the London connection. But I'm realistic to realise that many people in the city prefer to call it Londonderry. Others, of course, prefer to call it Derry Columkill, which is a real Irish name for it. I would settle for Derry, and in everyday life it's commonly called Derry by all people within the city. But if we attempt to remove the London from Londonderry, and a dozen people are killed the following week, is it worth the cost? To me, it's not.
Morning, Sergeant Newman.
The CO inspects the Guildhall checkpoint before the morning rush hour.
Good morning. How are we all this morning?
Every car and every person entering the city centre is searched. It's as much a ritual, as much a part of going to work for the office and shop staff as buying a bus ticket. It becomes a matter of course. A housewife out shopping could be searched 4 or 5 times. The searching is done by civilian searchers guarded by the army.
OK, Sergeant Newman, thank you. Right, Mr. Whitehouse. Up to Masonic. No, Bridge. Up to the Diamond.
The CO is walking through a gate in the walls of Derry up into the historic centre of the city, where Protestant determination proved itself in 1689. The grandest Protestant wall paintings inspired by those events have just been damaged for the first time since they were painted 50 years ago. They were first painted by Bobby Jackson in the 1920s. Bobby was then a coach painter. These are painted on a wall that was put up after an accident that Bobby had. He'd been to a fair to buy a horse and cart, and they slipped over the drop at the end of his street. Both Protestants and Catholics live in mental landscapes of symbols that refer to events in the past or hopes for the future. To the Protestants, the grandest symbols are the walls of Derry itself. Built by the merchants of London who founded the city, it was these walls that protected the Protestants in 1689 against the Pretender James III, who had swept through Ireland with a French Catholic army in the first stage of his struggle against William of Orange. The apprentices of Derry closed the gates against James. The siege lasted 112 days, broken when a boat, the Mountjoy, forced its way upriver from the sea. The Catholics, too, have their memories, like Bloody Sunday. The memorial to it is in the Bogside. "13 men died on Bloody Sunday. It's impossible to exaggerate the way that this event burnt itself into the hearts and minds of the Catholic community, joining other historic events to strengthen their determination to unite Ireland.
Mr. Whitehouse.
stop car. Registration Bravo India Whiskey 24
Morning.
26. A red Hillman Avenger with a black vinyl roof.
The redevelopment is working its way around the walls, and Bobby Jackson's paintings are in the way. There is an attempt being made to save one of them, but this one is definitely doomed. It shows the arrival of King William in Ireland when he led his troops against James III and finally beat him at the Battle of the Boyne. Because the whole area is being redeveloped, Bobby has to sort out all his mementos and paintings, many often done with the help of one of his sons. He has 24 children, born and raised in a 3-roomed house, so there's no shortage of useful grandchildren to help him. He lives in a strongly Protestant area of the city called the Fountain, in the shadow of the cathedral and the city walls. As many as possible of the community are being rehoused in the new flats, and it's somewhere near here they hope to erect Bobby's wall, but he'll be short of space in his new flat to keep his paintings.
Well, now, this picture you see here, which is on the wall here now, this is the real Battle of the Boyne. They have all the regiments there of different regiments here on different colours. King William then came with his white horse, and then he crossed at this Battle of the Boyne on his white horse. And first of all, he was wounded. He was wounded in a white horse. Now, this other picture down here, it was with the wish of his wife that he changed his horse. If he had went through it on the white horse, he would have been killed dead. So that's how he only just got wounded, and that's why he changed into that horse. Now, here is the whole thing of the city of Derry. Here we have got the walls, here we have got the ancient cathedral, and here we have got the Mount Joy that broke the boom.
On the roof is a roof rack. This car is carrying false plate. Where was it last seen, Owen? The Tango 2 heading underneath the Craighaven Bridge on Foyle Road. Heading northeast, over. 0 Roger.
There are two parts of the city, the older, bigger, and now predominantly Catholic city side, and across the bridge, the water side, now predominantly Protestant. Before 1968, the two communities were much more mixed together. On the water side lives Marlene Jefferson, a unionist, Protestant city councillor.
We have a very serious unemployment situation in the city. I think I don't think we're the highest. I think Strabhan's the highest. We're second highest in Northern Ireland. It is a problem, and the city council have done, well, if they've tried to organise different meetings to see if it can be solved, you will never completely solve it. You can look at it from the security point of view. The security situation doesn't help in encouraging industry to the town. And as well as that, we have another situation, which is that we have the name of having the highest birth rate in Western Europe. I don't think it applies this year, but it's applied for quite a few years. And this and unemployment, I feel, goes side by side.
In the evening, there's a very delicate meeting at the Guildhall. Councillors from both sides of the border meet in the council chamber to discuss an EEC report that treats the whole area as a unit, the North West. It seems possible there might be assistance from the EEC, but only if there can be cooperation across the border, so the area is thought of as an economic unit. It's politically extremely sensitive. Some Protestant councillors refused to discuss it at all, but assembled in the Guildhall are representatives from councils on both sides of the border.
And then three lots of representatives get together as quickly as possible, and then when we agree and our council agrees, then approach the respective governments. But I think we have to move as quickly as possible, because if we drag our feet, they'll drag theirs.
Derry has been relatively calm for some years. It was a mutilated city, but much of the damage has been tidied and repaired. It had some of the worst slums in Western Europe. They've gone. There used to be houses piled close to the walls, but they've been cleared away. Colonel Prosser inspects the walls of Derry. It's only the army who go on the walls now. Before 1968, it was a regular walking place for the people.
How's the Bogside this morning?
The walls were closed because they were designed only too well. They overlook so much of the surrounding city that they're ideal either for sniping or observing. The army have observation posts all round the walls, some of them in the old fortifications, using them exactly as they were used in the siege of Derry.
Call sign 9 is here. Good morning. You on your own?
Francis?
Say again.
Who's that speaking?
It's Roddy the adjutant. Say again.
Yes, sir. It's just that Lima's being used by teddy bears at the moment, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Right, what's
It's a
going on?
paradox of Derry that an extremely busy, hard-working army spends much of its time observing a population that hasn't enough work.
Yeah.
I'm 6 years unemployed now, and there's nothing unusual for a man to find himself in Derry. And I have applied to every large employer in the town on more than one occasion, and on most times the application is completely ignored. They don't even extend you the courtesy of replying to your letter of application for a job.
Tuesday is Eamon Malloch's signing-on morning. He worked in Glasgow as a bus driver before coming back to Derry in 1960.
In the city of Derry, 18% of the insured male population is without work. When you come into the Catholic ghettos, such as Craigan, that 18% pales into insignificance.
18% means that 1 in 5 men in the city who could work are unemployed. It's concentrated into areas. Unemployment is not spread evenly across the city. Eamon lives in the Catholic Craigan estate. He's only had short spells of casual work since he came back to Derry.
The rate of unemployment in Craigan would be something in the region of 45%. And we've had that level of unemployment since the estate was built back in 1949. You get an indication just by looking at it that there is a large degree of demoralisation among the people, and I think that's bred by mass unemployment.
It's probably the biggest single problem that we have, and it probably was the cause of most of our trouble. No, the unemployment rate is much, much too high, and there's little that's been done. It will take a massive injection of money and effort to try and make things at least take a turn for the better. This is the unfortunate thing about it. We can't see, and we haven't seen for many years, any signs of light at all. And I'm very pessimistic in that way. I just don't see any signs of any relief in the unemployment situation at all.
The social security offices on the city side tend to be used by Catholics. Many Protestants prefer to use another office in a small town over the river.
I know examples where the man, having been unemployed for years, that an adult son or an adult daughter has had to assume the responsibility normally assumed by the head of the family, simply because that he's not making a financial contribution to the household, that he is made to feel, if he has a working son or sons or working daughters, that he's forced to feel in some way inferior. In fact, I have a situation in this house where one of my teenage sons is the only boy working, will say to me, well, I'm the only one in this house bringing in a wage. If it's been said here, it has been said in other houses, and it must have a marked effect on some of the men.
In a city of such massive long-term unemployment, it's been the women who worked, famous as the shirt makers of Derry. Before the present social security system arrived, they had to support their families. The shirt factories, like this one, employ a few men, but the main labour force is female. Many shirt factories have closed due to the effects of foreign competition. Those that remain produce many of the high-quality shirts sold by the major chains throughout Britain. They're set in amongst the houses of the community so that it's easier for the mothers to maintain contact with their families. To maintain this tradition, a large modern shirt factory has been built between the Craigan and Bogside estates. By doing this, the management are sure of easy access to labour, especially because of the high level of unemployment amongst men on the estate. Most new factories are not built in the city at all, but on the large industrial estate a few miles downriver. These factories are mainly run by large multinational companies who've come here because it's financially a profitable place to start a factory. There are substantial subsidies and inducements, together with a large labour pool that has a good reputation. These factories do not begin to solve the unemployment problem, especially among the young. To counteract this, there are job creation schemes in the city, but a charitable organisation runs this special workshop to prepare school leavers for unemployment.
I believe that the age of full employment is gone. I think it'll never happen. We never had it here, we never will have it here. I think that the workshop is about helping people to cope with life, whether they happen to be working or happen to be unemployed, so that they can come to terms with the situation.
In the Derry situation, in a town of about 75 or 80,000 people, there are at present in the age group 16 to 18, 19, about 400 or 500 people unemployed. Now that will double at the end of May when the school year ends. There is a huge number of young people who have no immediate prospect of a job, or maybe no long-term prospect of a job either. We would like them to come to the workshop, as many as we can take, and give them as wide a range of work experience within a one-year period as we can.
Paddy Doherty and Colin Connolly of the Youth Community Workshop. The other problem associated with unemployment is related to the divided community. When the working day is over, both sides go back to their own separate communities. For most people in the city, the only time they meet across the divide is at work. They live separately, worship separately, drink separately. The schools are separate. If a school leaver doesn't get work, he can go for years never meeting anyone from the other side. Only if they go on to higher education will they mix.
Well, look, when you're pasting it, you paste from the centre, like so. Putting on the paste fairly liberally and out to the ends, like that. Take it up like that. And
the mayor is a tutor in interior decorating at the Technical College. Before 1968, he was involved in youth work, but he had no thought of taking part in politics. Derry was notoriously gerrymandered. The Protestants ran the council, and that was that. The very possibility of a Catholic mayor was a joke. However, the troubles started and Hugh Doherty became involved in politics, joined the SDLP and became the first Catholic mayor of Londonderry.
That's right.
Early evening. Above the Craigan estate is Craigan Camp, where the night patrols are being briefed.
We're going to come in at the southern part of the estate and enter by the school. Code words.
The Brigadier is going out to this night patrol to keep in touch.
Watchkeeper. Compromised. Try again. New position. London Bridge. Move to RV. Sleeping Beauty. All right, move to the loading bay.
They'll be out until about 10:30 p.m. Other patrols will go out at intervals during the night, and then around dawn, the patrols detailed for house searches. "7:30. Mrs. Irwin goes to catch the bus that will take her to visit her husband. In the Craigan and down in the Bogside, groups of prisoners' relatives gather together. Above, from Craigan Camp, the helicopter starts the daily surveillance. The bus for the prison visit is organised by the Provisional Sinn Féin, hired from the Ulster Bus Company. On several mornings each week, there are busloads like this. Up in Craigan Camp, it's changeover time in the watchtowers.
Where's Bernie? No, you couldn't put them on there. Take them on there.
I'm not going to have the possible, I am
Right, ma'am.
What? No, what are you going to James looking for me maps?
Cover the front gate sentry if he ever has to go out and open the gate, and also if the VCP's deployed, cover that as well. Inform the guard of any approaching cars, whether they're coming past.
The bus is on its way to the Belfast prisons, including Cromlin Road and the Maze.
All right. Beware of your action if you get sniped at. Same with a proxy bomb, a mortar attack or a rocket attack, and remember your action for an air attack.
Craigan Camp has been fired at 127 times in the last 5 years. Each foot patrol leaves the security of the camp feeling at its most vulnerable. Down in the Craigan estate, it's a normal day. Men are at work dismantling cars. There's a useful trade in second-hand spare parts. Eamon Mullock is at his unpaid full-time occupation, unofficial social worker, called in to fight social security appeals, give general advice, and help when people are in trouble.
If somebody's house is raided in the street, the likelihood is that I will be sent for, and that may mean getting up out of your bed at 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. If somebody is arrested, and somebody's arrested in this estate every day, I would be sent for and asked to contact the police and the army and to set up a visit or to get a solicitor, things like that. I would just like to make this point about violence, that those involved in violence are involved against the express wishes of the overwhelming majority of the people in this estate and other estates. But I want to qualify my condemnation. If I am prepared to condemn the mindless violence of the paramilitaries, I am obliged to condemn the social violence of the state by creating a situation where 45% of the insured male population is out of work and I want to condemn the other social deprivations that arise from that. I won't be used to condemn paramilitary violence alone. And that's a point I would want to make very forcibly.
We try and to be as inoffensive as possible in our patrolling. We try not to rampage about in great groups of people. We try and be selective as possible in the people we talk to or the operations that we have to carry out. Unfortunately, some of the operations, like searching or asking people to come in for questioning, does disrupt life, but we try and do it as quickly and as painlessly as possible.
Major Tony Gavain. The police do not go into Catholic areas without the protection of the army. The searching of houses is a joint operation between the army and the police. Patrolling like this is relatively routine, but searching, which is probably the most contentious activity of the security forces, they don't allow to be filmed. A patrol like this has many functions. One of them is basically a public relations job. The army arranged for derelict cars to be removed, taking them away after they've been dismantled.
See, what we're doing is...
They weren't a bit here last Wednesday, but...
Well, see, what we're doing is we're trying to move all the derelicts off the Cregan area to make it look a far better estate.
The main function of a patrol is military. They observe, they stop people they're suspicious of, they take notes of any changes. If Mr. X has painted his door another colour, they record any activity and who is living where.
Really, the army's been here so long that soldiers in uniform are part of a way of life. Sad that may seem. The burden of the difficulty is with the soldier, the private soldier, who's got to be sufficiently aware of who he's talking to and how he talks to him. He's got to have the psychology of a customs officer, really, to know just how far he can go with any one person. I think that's asking an awful lot of the young soldiers. At this moment in time, the level of violence is low, but we know that at any moment an incident could erupt. Although I don't think this whole situation will deteriorate overnight, an incident could take place, and that's what we're all poised for.
3 and 1.
Down in the Bogside Community Centre, it's the Wednesday afternoon for elderly ladies of the community.
37. 40. Blind 40.
The youngest boy's name is?
Patrick.
Patrick. And his school is?
The Holy Child.
Class?
P5.
Primary 5. And he's living here with you, is he?
Yes.
Eamon is arranging holidays for children.
Number 9.
Sorry. Number 9 Arnold Avenue.
6 and 4. 64. 80. Blind 80.
No sisters?
No sisters, no.
It's a one-parent family, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I'm forced to ask you about their behaviour because there's a referral question here. How is their behaviour?
Well, they're normal in ways, but they have their days too.
They do have their off days.
Pardon me, we have to listen. You have to listen. Isn't that right? What else are you? Us rushing up Blaze Lane to get a place to sit down.
Yes, I'm
Hello, Jean.
down to torture again.
Down to torch again. I'm round with this petition for Lord Melchett, to Lord Melchett about the one-parent families, and also the referral forms to see if we can get 1 or 2 of your children away for a free holiday this summer.
Great, so that's
Well,
great, thanks, Shirley.
Can I come in and follow?
There's a beautiful city that stands by the foil, and that goes by the name of Londonderry. It is famous for sure to make ours all of you know, just as well as for brandy and sherry. They're vest makers, dressmakers, milliners too. They're shop girls and pop girls so airy. But the pets of them all I am bound to recall, and the factory girls of Londonderry, Londonderry.
There's a gentle morning rush hour at the checkpoints in the country near the border. Many business and professional people live over the border in Donegal and commute through the checkpoints.
501 November Zulu.
The checkpoints are computer terminals. Every car is checked, many are searched.
Alpha Uniform India 2050.
Road clear.
Delta Juliet India 710.
Thursday is Bobby Jackson's day off. His new flat is waiting, all ready to move in. The furniture's there, but he and his wife can't bear to leave their old home until the last possible moment, especially since, in the past, they lived in a mixed community.
And now, with the new houses, we're divided. When you go through Bishop Gate and you take the middle of the road, you turn to your left, lovely houses, all Protestants. You do about turn, you look to the other side of the street, beautiful houses, new houses, all lovely done up and all Roman Catholics. Where is unity? Where's love thy neighbour when we're all divided? And where that division is, there's never going to be peace.
Bands like these commemorate the heroes of the siege of Londonderry, the apprentices. This one also commemorates a Protestant paramilitary sergeant, Lindsay Mooney. The inscription on the drum says that he was killed on active service. He was carrying explosives in his car when they exploded. The band is allowed to play out of doors in its own area, but not to march. It would cause a riot if it left its own community.
Go, cover over.
Derry has achieved a special way of using its pubs. In spite of the fact they are full, they're often silent. And a busy, quiet Irish pub is astonishing.
3 scored for an 8-point question. Which one word means a flat candlestick with a handle, a jocular term for the head, a small fort or earthwork? I'll repeat it if you wish.
Pub quizzes. Most nights of the week there is one somewhere. It's an elaborate business with famous teams, knockout tournaments. No one seems to know why they developed here, but they're an important part of life.
Tango 4 to Foxtrot, Victor check. Juliet, Oscar, India, 189, over. Yeah. Come level. Okay, check.
It's a special night at the Debating Society. It's the final of the Senior Challenge Cup. Meetings are held every Thursday. About 200 turn up regularly, the standard of debate is very high. It's a formal debate with two sides, voting and adjudication. Many of the members are teachers, students or unemployed graduates.
And the teams who have reached the final tonight are the Scholars, under the convener Mr. Raymond Doherty, and the Bards, under the convener Mr. Peter Enright. The motion tonight is this House would reintroduce capital punishment. And tonight we have two very distinguished members to adjudicate our debate, two former members of the Columkill Debating Society. First of all, we have our Mayor, Mr. Hugh Doherty, and I would like you to give him a very big welcome.
Five seconds. Take an answer. No.
Tail.
Not a tail. The handover.
Bonds.
Not a bonds. The floor. Would you believe it's a sconce? Perhaps Joe read the dictionary upside down tonight.
First of all, I would like to point out that any opinions expressed by any speakers here tonight are not necessarily their own views. They're purely for debate tonight, and I think that is very important.
Who's the first player to score in every round of the League Cup? 5 seconds.
McDonald.
Not McDonald. On a handover.
Jerry Hitchens.
Not Jerry Hitchens, no.
Ken Leake.
The floor. Not Ken Leake.
Ray Turner.
Not Ray Turner. I'll sit here and listen to him. Not Ray Turner. Tony Brown of West Bromwich Albion is absolutely correct.
In proposing that this House should reintroduce capital punishment, we recognise that we're not being particularly fashionable. But we will argue that truth is not a matter of fashion. It is not a matter of whim. It is not a transient thing. We make no bones about the definition of this motion. We take it to mean quite clearly the bringing into effect of a judicial, legal termination of a human life.
Ladies and gentlemen, look again at the wording of this motion. This House would reintroduce capital punishment. As far as I can see, there are no contextual restrictions. There is no moral setting. There is no set of values implicit in its reintroduction. It is left to the powers that be, whoever they might be, to apply their particular set of values to its use. The powers that be, whether the proposition like it or not, include despots, tyrants and repressive governments the world over. Capital punishment fosters desperation. Desperate men become more desperate. The cynical killer more cynical. If a man has killed once, he can only be executed once.
When the night patrol returned, they were debriefed by an intelligence officer. The information given was too secret to permit the sound of their reports to be recorded.
To give you the score, Mullins 57, Georges 129.
The motion to reintroduce capital punishment was just carried. But this represents the effectiveness of the arguments, not the attitudes of the debating society. The events of the last 10 years have led to the movement of people all around the city. There's a division occurring, Catholics to the city side, Protestants to the water side.
I'm a city sider born and bred, and I lived at the corner of Hawkins Street above the shop where I did business, and unfortunately we were bombed. The building was completely wrecked, and at that time we were left homeless. Fortunately enough, the housing executive offered me temporary accommodation in the Academy Road area. We lived there for 18 months, and then we decided we would buy a house. And when we came, at the time, the only development, private development, was actually on the water side. So we came and looked at these houses and decided we would buy, and we moved over here. and exiled from the city side.
Marlene Jefferson had been away for a few days, returning to the city on Thursday. She discovered that their car had been stolen and she had to travel with her husband in a builder's van belonging to his firm. The division of the city is a matter of deeply concerned debate. Some people consider it a fundamental divide that cannot be reversed. Others think it's temporary. It's true that many Catholics will not visit Protestant areas. The reverse is true of Protestants, and it's especially true of the young.
There are certain searches still going on at the moment. And on Queen Street, which is B Company, in at 5 to 7, they're still not out. Okay, searches.
Still, old ties remain. My grocer is still in the city side. We still go to church in the city side. And my 8-year-old son, Tom, still goes to school on the city side. And it's very hard to break those ties. I loved the house and loved the area. And many days I found myself there with really nothing to do. But just the fact was I was over the bridge and I was home. And this is something, you never lose that feeling. People are obviously using it now as a dividing line, but it's not really. Really, there was always a difference. And the folk who lived at the city side and the folk who lived on the water side. In fact, many years back it used to be compared with different parts of Glasgow. And at one time they used to call the water side the Gorbals, which offended many folk. It was only fun, but really it's not, in my eyes, a political divide at all, or a religious divide.
At Cregan Heights, which was an additional task this morning, in at 06:45 and they came out at 06:53. And they've made one rucksack arrest. You do it.
Monsieur Giraffe, good morning.
Eamon Malach used to live on the waterside.
We now have a rigid religious demarcation line which happens to be the River Foyle. My wife had a friend who died in the waterside, and the street in the waterside that she went to the wake was a street that we in fact lived in the waterside. And my son was shocked and horrified, a 17-year-old boy, was shocked and horrified to think that his mother was going to take her life in her hand by visiting a friend. It happened to be a Catholic, but it didn't matter.
Marlene Jefferson entered politics a few years ago. She's a councillor for a district that includes the Protestant Fountain as well as Catholic Bogside. She crosses the divide in this way because she was elected by proportional representation. Emotionally, she still lives in the Fountain, returning often. This shop stands where her own shop and home were before she was bombed out.
Your shop's looking extremely well now.
Yeah, it's coming up.
Just admire it from the outside there. Very smart indeed. How's business?
Very good. We're opening next door in the middle of May.
Oh, lovely. This is the new extension.
New extension, yeah.
Very nice.
Hello, Romeo 31 Bravo. This is Tango 14 Alpha. We're looking for a yellow Ford Cortina, last seen moving down Beechwood Avenue towards East Way. If you see this car, report in and we'll get a mobile round there over to it, over.
Romeo 31 Bravo, roger that.
Tango 1 Alpha, acknowledge, over.
Tango 1, roger that.
Say the old Ten's just come out of his house. I seen him the other day and he had long hair. Just seen him again and he's had it cut. He's heading through Brew Park.
Yeah, okay, what was he wearing?
He's wearing a light-coloured denim jacket, blue jeans, and he's carrying a brown duffel bag.
Yeah, okay, just watch him and tell us which way he goes out the park, all right?
Okay.
Well, there has been this in-depth surveillance of the civilian population by the military, and it's been quite remarkable, the extent and the degree of it. And to give you an example of just exactly what the army do know, about the individual in the area. When stopped at a checkpoint, miles outside of town, when an individual is asked to identify themselves, they can name the father and mother, brothers and sisters, and give the dates of birth. They can even tell them who the neighbours are, and in fact will identify the fittings and furniture in the room, and will tell them what colour and what pattern's on the wallpaper. People have come to terms with that. They've come to terms with it. People haven't come to terms with most anything.
If we meet someone that's sort of hard person, then we target him more. That means we bother him more. If we know he's involved in terrorism himself, we every hour check him sort of thing, and then up the road another bit of trouble, we check him, and keep bothering him until we fix him again. But if we know that people aren't involved, we just let them go on their own way. And that's how we try to break the terrorism down.
In the evening, a party in the Fountain Community Centre. Marlene Jefferson is back among her neighbours.
Well, Tommy, if it doesn't have any...
In the Mayor's parlour, a reception for a Junior Chamber of Commerce conference.
We are, of course, Tommy's official unionist, SDLP.
An army patrol drop into the party. The atmosphere would not stay the same if they entered a Catholic community centre.
It's almost certain it will happen this year again, you know. What happens in the future is anybody's guess, you know.
This is the city football ground, used for small-scale greyhound racing. It's a long time since there was a city football team. That stopped with the Troubles. Football used to be something that bound the people together. It's missed by most people. They're strong football fans here, but visiting clubs wouldn't play Derry because of the violence. It's difficult to see it starting up again. Saturday is just about the only time that the city centre comes to life, the only time there are crowds around. If we ignore the searching of shopping bags, it feels quite normal. There's even a public meeting going on. But the feeling of normality vanishes when the subject becomes clear: to raise support for prisoners on blanket protest in H Block.
Young men, that is what's known as a blanket protest. They refuse to wear a convict garb and they refuse to do convict work.
Two sisters of prisoners take part in a meeting organised by the Provisional Sinn Féin.
Here Nugent of Belfast was the first man on the blanket protest and has been there on it for 2 years. These young men will fight to the bitter end, but these young men and young girls need your support. And many people seem to be indifferent or apathetic to the suffering. It is not enough to come here whenever we have the TV cameras.
Most people on the mainland think the problems of Ulster are remote. Eamon Malach would not agree.
The people in England are possibly getting a look, an undignified look into the future with the situation that exists here. Because I can conceive of the English working class tolerating a non-employment rate that we've been tolerating for the past 50 years. Now, this city is called Derry, and we've a population of 60,000, and we've 18% of our population, the insured population, out of work. if you were to transmit that rate of unemployment to the City of London, then you would have in excess of 600,000 people unemployed in the City of London. And I will suggest to you, or to anybody else, that if that situation arises in London, there will be corresponding violence.
They like their freedom as much as we like ours. Just feel sorry for them, so.
That's just bring the point back. Would we like armed soldiers walking about our towns, like Manchester, Liverpool? They wouldn't like it. It's the same feeling by these people. But when's it going to change?
Saturday night, travelling across the border to a Republican evening of music. The Wolf Tones, a popular group with a repertoire of Republican songs.
Once again, on the